Alright. Do we need to do the test thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Once upon a time, they lived happily ever after. The end.
Here you could go.
That's the only story I know. Joe is the storyteller, not me. Yeah, I'm just here for the free Oreos, which I actually bought and paid for and provided. But it's the thought that counts.
Okay. And Joe, if you could just tell us about your weekend for 30 seconds, so I can set the levels of the microphone.
Much have I travelled in the realms of gold, and many goodly states and kingdoms seen. Round many western islands have I been, that bards in fealty to Apollo hold. Enough?
That's very nice, thank you.
Yeah, that actually does sound like
I wish I had recorded it.
I know!
I did.
It's my
yes!
Yes. I'll do the rest of it recorded.
Okay, then we are ready whenever you are.
And what are we talking about?
Well, I expect we're talking about you.
Can we do something more interesting? Okay.
So this is Rose Fox interviewing Jo Walton, who just is about to take home, literally, the Nebula for Best Novel. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I wanted to start with something that you said in your acceptance speech, if you don't mind me getting a little bit personal, since you talked about this on stage. You thanked your mother for being evil because it gave you experience writing evil characters, and said that it was actually a great boost to your career. I've never heard anyone say anything like that, so I was wondering if you could expand on that a little bit.
Jeff Ryman gave a great acceptance speech where he and Rachel Swirsky did the generic acceptance speech where everybody thanks their mother and their editor and their agent and their refrigerator and their stereo, which I thought was really funny. And it suddenly occurred to me when he did that, because I thought, well, I'm not going to thank my mother. And then I thought, hey, I can thank my mother. That would be so hilarious. I could thank my mother for being this great evil inspiration to me as a fantasy novel, because the great thing about having an evil mother, or in mundane terms, a paranoid schizophrenic mother, is that it does give you experience of people like that, so that it's easier to write about people like that, or people whose intent is not always good, because otherwise you sort of turn into Spider Robinson, where everybody just is, they have good intentions and they're misunderstood, and you could sort it all out in the end if everybody became telepathic.
Right.
Whereas I think it would be terrible if everybody was telepathic. I think it would be a dreadful disaster. My everybody becomes telepathic story would be apocalypse.
I'd love to read that story, actually.
I never thought about before.
And I think of, among others, as actually really playing around with that line between, is it evil, is it mental illness, is it magic, is it hallucination?
Well, in reality, in my actual real life, it was mental illness. Not my mental illness, but my mother's mental illness. And so when in a way, I empower that by making it magic. Mm-hmm. But certainly I intended it to be magic. It never occurred to me that anybody would not notice the awesome magic system that I'd worked out. That was one of my favourite things about the book. Because it's set in the real world, and there is no magic in the real world really. So if I was going to have a book set in the real world that had magic, it had to be magic with plausible deniability. It had to be non-falsifiable magic. So that's what I did. I had this non-falsifiable magic system, and it did not cross my mind that people would read it and think, is this actually real? Because it's fantasy. And I thought that people would be reading it with that hat on, with that protocol.
It says so right on the spine.
Yeah, quite, yeah. So that's a response to it that surprised me.
Mm-hmm. So it really, I think it is difficult to read it as a purely mimetic, non-fantastical book. I think ultimately there's sort of no question that magic intrudes into the real world. But I expect that actually did surprise some people who were going, oh well, she thinks she sees fairies.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing that's been questioned somewhat by people in the audience, by your readers, is how much of this is biographical, autobiographical. Because again, it's difficult for someone who's not you, I guess, to know how much of this is real world and how much is made up.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if you could get into that a little bit. Unless that's a question that bores the hell out of you and
Well,
you're asked it all the time, in which case I can think of something else.
I used some parts of my life that were 30 years ago as source material. And so, yeah, there is some stuff in there that is just directly real, and there are other things that I made up, and it's all mixed together the way it always is. It's just that it's a character who's a lot closer to me, and a situation that's a lot closer to my life than it normally would be.
And I think that's part of what gives it its power, that people can read this and go, wow, this feels really real.
Yeah, I guess. I mean the books are real, but a lot of it is actually real. Some of it is made up. You can't possibly tell where the lines are in terms of where that is, I think. I mean, people have asked me all sorts of things. I mean, my aunt who was there, I sent her the first 2,000 words, the first chapter, the prologue chapter, really to see whether she was going to say, you can't write about this stuff, because she's the only person who is alive who's got the right to say that, because it's her life as well. And she said, did that really happen? And I said, did what really happen? And she said, did you go to the furnace side and throw flowers in the water? And I said, no. Magic isn't actually real. She said, but it did close down. I said, yes, it did close down. But I did not. She said, well, you could have thrown the flowers in even if it didn't make it. I said, no, I didn't. So I think it's a thing that's hard to untangle, even for people who totally people who were there. Because, a lot of it is rooted in my actual experience, but also a lot of it is made up. I mean, and it's there for thematic reasons, or it's there to shape the thing in the way that I wanted to. And I changed a lot of things.
So you've set books in entirely fantasy worlds. You've set books in history, alternate history, and now this is something closer to our history, to familiar non-alternate history. Are you going to continue to wander around every genre? See if you can do one of each.
That would be nice. Yes, I get bored. What you're supposed to do to have a career is to write books that are kind of really similar to each other, so that people know what they're getting when they get one of your books. And I just get tired of writing the same kind of books. I wrote 3 Celtic-y fantasies, and then I was really so sick of the Celtic fantasies. And I wrote 3 books about fascists, and I'm so sick of fascists you wouldn't believe. I never want to see another fascist in my entire life. And so there's an element of that. I'm just bored now. Let's do something else. But all of my books are kind of rooted in history, one way or another. History is what I know, and when I think of things, I stop playing about with history.
All right. Well, thank you so much. It's really lovely to get a chance to sit and talk to you. This is actually, I think, the only chance we've had all convention. So I'm glad to have the excuse.
Okay. Well, thank you.